Your province was the first in the country to bring in a
Hmm.
carbon tax.
Yeah.
And at the time they said, carbon tax, it's revenue neutral. We'll add a new tax on everything, but don't worry, it's revenue neutral, which is garbage because how do you
Yeah.
tax everything? And then even if they gave you everything you paid back, it has to cycle through the hands of 1,000 bureaucrats before they rebate it to you out the other side. And they don't
Yeah.
work for free. Let me
Hmm.
tell you that. But I mean, it's the biggest Ponzi scheme in government ever.
Hmm.
But now BC is realizing that after, I don't know, the better part of 2 decades of telling you that the carbon tax, not only will it save the earth and reduce emissions, which it didn't, but it actually won't cost you any more. Now they're saying, yeah, no, it's getting too expensive. So I guess it was costing everybody something all along.
Oh, it was costing something all along. And what does this mean for what it's actually doing for the climate change
Right.
emergency? But let's not forget the elephant in the room here, which is we are about to go into election. So that's what this is really about, right? British Columbia's election is on October 19th, and all of a sudden, Premier Eby, who was one of what, only a couple premiers who didn't join in on Pierre Poilievre's fight the tax or axe the tax campaign that he was doing, all of them said, we're going to fight it. And do you remember what Eby said? He said, I don't live in the Pierre Poilievre baloney factory, and went on to say why canceling the tax would mean it would be more expensive for British Columbians. So there's so much hypocrisy here, including the fact that they have been, on a side note, their whole party is sort of smearing their competitor, John Rusted of the Conservative Party of BC, as climate deniers. So
Right.
they were staunch supporters of the tax. And then now, all of a sudden, just before the election, we don't need it.
Yeah,
It's
they keep
nuts.
telling me we're in some sort of climate emergency, but nobody cares about a climate emergency when you're in the cost of living emergency, right?
Yeah,
Right? Like
exactly.
c- caring about climate change is a really, really, really first world thing. If indeed
Yeah.
you think it's happening at all, and I don't. I'm a farmer. I make my living by the weather. And so I should be more concerned about this than anybody, and I don't think it's a thing. But I see the Conservative Party of BC,
Yeah.
they're
Yep.
taking a victory lap. And they should,
As they
because
should.
as they
Yeah.
should, because they've been called climate deniers and cavemen and science deniers who don't follow the science and don't trust the experts. And all of a sudden, the NDP joins them, and they issued a statement saying, and this is from John Rustad, the leader,
Yeah. Yeah.
who's one of the winningest people in politics in Canada right now because he's like
Yeah.
collapsing the competition,
Yeah.
rolling it into the fold, getting the NDP to walk back their support of their flagship legislation, the carbon tax. Like when you think of the carbon tax in BC,
Hmm.
or when you think of the BC NDP, here's what I think of: drugs, literally everywhere, homelessness, and the
Yeah.
carbon tax. That's the thing. Those are the things, right?
Well, and
But don't,
sexually indoctrinating kids. Don't forget that one.
that right, right, and drag shows.
Yeah.
Um, what a legacy!
Yeah. I
People
love
can't
what
afford a house in the Lower Mainland, but yeah, go ahead and say what John Rustad said.
Well, I just love it's right there in the title where he slams Evie as a flip-flopping liar. It's just so we got to put that in a headline ourselves,
Yeah.
quoting him. But he says David Eby has lied to British Columbians before and he'll do it again. He's flip-flopped on this because he's losing ground. And if reelected, he'll waste no time reversing his position on the tax. And basically, British Columbians deserve something more stable. And he goes on there, but it's totally true. The Conservative Party was very quick to come out and join the fight to axe the tax. And just how smug Eby, it wasn't just that Eby didn't participate in that, he was so smug about it
Yeah.
in doing so. And here he is with his tail between his legs because he is losing ground in popularity just before the polls.
Yeah, further down that statement says that David Eby's sudden reversal on the carbon tax is a desperate attempt to salvage his sinking political ship, said
Hmm.
Rustad. Let's be clear, Eby has spent years championing this disastrous tax that punishes families and businesses. Now, faced with growing opposition, he's pretending to care. It's
Yeah,
nothing more than a cynical ploy. I'm really enjoying, frankly, and we'll get to it a little bit later on in the show, all these people actually using the word lying to describe people who
I
are actually lying
I
for once.
know.
Usually it's like, oh, he's unfamiliar with the truth, or
Right.
the things he's saying are incompatible with reality. Now we're just calling
Like,
everybody liars, and
oh,
I like that they're
simple
cutting through the BS. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we've
good.
had enough BS, haven't we? So cut right
Yeah.
through it. And actually, Sing is doing the
Yes.
same thing. Let's not
Yeah.
forget that. Sing is
Yes.
backpedaling as well now. It was, oh, I will not support it, or it's too much for, the everyday people that he pretends his party still represents. When he has supported the carbon tax, I want to say like 20 different times, right? Like,
Yes. Yeah, God,
yeah,
he's looking terrible these days too. Look at his skin looks just sallow, and uh I don't think he's doing well. Maybe it's like the mustard color of his turban that's washing him out, but I think he looks tired and just rattled every time he makes a public appearance these days. Yet Globe Politics, their headline today is signals NDP plan to oppose carbon tax, says it puts burden on the backs of working people.
you
So what
think?
does that mean? You think? But even if they shift the carbon tax over to the producers, like say they
Mhm.
say, okay, well, we're going to tax
Right.
big oil. Um, okay, what do you think that's going to do to the
Yeah.
price of fuel? What do you think that's
Yeah.
going to do? We're going to tax the electricity companies. Okay, what do you think that's going to do to the cost of turning on the light switch? Like they don't pay it. Every
Mhm.
tax is shoved. The thing about the carbon tax is it's added on every step of the way. So it's added on to
Yeah.
the what it was already added on. So it goes down the entire supply chain. But even
Mhm.
if you try to move it from the bottom of the supply chain and stick it on at the top, it still gets added on all the way down because it increases the cost of fuel, and that increases the cost of transportation, and that increases the cost of cooling, heating, whatever. And that also increases the cost of housing, bricks and mortar. It just adds the cost all the way down, but leave it to the socialists to not understand supply and demand and basic economics. We've got a video from Public Services Minister Jean-Yves Duclos, who says Poilievre and the Conservatives won an election. Well, that's true, because they're worried Canadians are understanding the great value of carbon pricing after the Trudeau Liberals rebranded the carbon tax as a rebate. Um, I
That's
think
good.
I think Canadians understand it just fine, and that's why the Liberals don't want an election.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a great question that you ask about carbon pricing. Now, the one reason for which Pierre Poilievre might want to have an election very soon on axe the tax and carbon pricing is that he's starting to feel the change in Canadians' understanding of the great value of that carbon pricing. Now, we have changed the name now to
My God.
make it better understood that there's a carbon rebate that comes with carbon pricing. Now, if you look at the numbers, you note that Canadians understand much better now in September 2024
Good.
that 8 out of 10 of Canadians receive more in their pockets than they pay through the carbon price. Now, that's not good news for Pierre Poilievre.
Oh my gosh. And the eye contact, it's like, you must believe every lie that's coming out of my mouth. I mean, it goes back to what you said about you get hit everywhere. If you get a rebate, it doesn't matter. Everywhere you go is more expensive because of this. And to twist it to think that, oh my gosh, we must have an election now. Canadians don't need an election to know that everything is becoming so expensive and something needs to be done about that.
It's the news event of the year. Canada's most controversial premier sits down with Canada's most controversial journalist, and everything is on the table. Come watch Ezra Levant one-on-one with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith in front of a live studio audience in Calgary. Nothing's off limits. Nothing's held back. Questions that would make Justin Trudeau invoke martial law. Answers that will make Stephen Guilbeault pee his pants. You're not going to want to miss this one. But you have to be there in person at the Rebel News Live mega conference in Calgary on October the 5th. Tickets are limited, so drop everything and go to rebelnewslive.com right now. Special discounted prices for Patriots and special extra high prices if you're with the CBC. Go to rebelnewslive.com now.